Is it working? That's too loud. I feel like I already speak loud enough, but I think it's for the camera. I kind of wish I could turn it down just a little. All right. So I feel like we're at the top of the half hour, so I'll go ahead and get started. If you have any questions as we go through, 100% just ask out loud. There's going to be some interactive to this because we're going to cover what you want to cover because we don't have enough time to cover everything in depth. So we'll kick it off. My name is Karinne Bessette. I'm a technologist for Veeam Software. I specialize in our M365 backup product. So if you have any questions of that, have any questions why you should be backing up, head over to our booth. We'd be more than happy to talk about that. That's my spiel. I am at RinBytes on all platforms from Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. You can find it there. We're going to first cover some of the threats that we face today. Then we're going to do a choose your story kind of scenario. And then, of course, any type of questions, feel free to jack up. It's too loud. Okay. Yeah. I feel like I've hurt ears, like I can be echoed. All right. So we're going to talk about some of the threats that we face. Of course, they're going to be 0 days. There's not much you can do about those except be up to date as much as humanly possible, get early detection types of systems, and then mitigate as much as possible. You're global and remote workers, so we live in a remote worker society. That's just, that's the fact that we're dealing with anymore. And lack of employee knowledge. So I don't know how familiar you guys are with different phishing types of tests that they have out there, but they show statistically 90% of your phishing attacks can be mitigated just by training, which is one of the #1 attack vectors that you have in your infrastructure is rogue emails. They make it look so good anymore that you might click on it yourself. I've almost been fooled. I'm like, wait a second, that doesn't go to the right website when I hover over it. And that's the only difference. If I was a layman user, I wouldn't even know to hover over it before clicking it. And then the excessive use of privileged accounts. So something we'll cover is you don't need to be a global administrator to do your job, and most of the time, global administrator doesn't cover everything. It's like being an AD admin to manage your Exchange server. It's not really going to work. All right, and we're going to cover just briefly the CIA. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the CIA. You've heard of it in different talks. But the biggest concept when it comes to the CIA is you can lock down your network so well, you can't even access it. And you got to find the balance in between locking down your network to make sure you have the confidentiality and your integrity of that data, but also the availability. If your users can't get to your data, they're going to find other ways to get to that data. They are going to go around your network, and they're going to make it even more vulnerable using their personal devices to get the data they need to get to do their job. Okay, so we're going to start off on this path, and we're going to start off on a high-level view of everything that we can cover, and we'll click on this, and high level. So, now this is going to be a question and interactive type of session. Every administrator needs to be a global administrator to do their job. Yes or no? Great. So that is not the case. There are several different types of administrator accounts. I'm sure that the list that I posted here may not even be the extensive list that they updated 3 months ago. So always adding additional accounts. You don't even have to be an administrator to do basic functions most of the time. So assign the appropriate management role. Limit those accounts. And just as a best practice overall, because you do need global administrator accounts for certain things, don't have more than 4. That includes your break glass accounts. Do we understand the break glass account? So a break glass account is the account that you never use, ever use, unless you are locked out of your system, and then you use it to get into your system when you need to. So it's just a safety account. You have whatever authentication that you have on it, but say you need to do an administrative role, and your phone broke, and you can't get into your account, but you need to do this to get around to get into your account again. It's called a break glass account. And then having no combined user and administrative accounts. This is probably one of the the biggest problem I see out there is the administrator The global administrator is using his email account that he uses to access his email on 5 or 6 different devices to also manage the organization. You need to have separate administrative accounts that you only use and you log in and you get in to do any administrative task versus the email account that you use to go check your Facebook, your email, your, whatever account that you have Google sign you into. And enforce a password policy. Don't make it so hard that people can't remember their passwords. Don't make it so easy that any password breaker could get in. And don't set your password retention to be so low, people have to continuously make easy passwords. The lower you set that retention, more than about 90 days, it's proven they're going to just start rolling digits. And you're going to keep rolling digits. Okay, I'm at a compromised email. I'm going to go up 1 digit. No longer compromised, right? Yeah, you got to be mindful of that. Don't make it hard on your users. Okay, the next one. Threats cannot be mitigated with a BYOD policy. True or false? False? False. That is correct. So there are many different security measures that you can use, like Intune and other endpoint and device management systems, and not just on the entire device itself. You can have MDMAs, or, too many acronyms. Mobile Device Manager, which allows you to also do applications. So you could have like a walled garden type of experience where you're not able to copy out of your application or into your application from the same mobile device that you do not have to manage through your network. So that's also a consideration you can do. You can even lock down, say Joe decides he's going to jailbreak his phone because he thought it was something cool to do. Well, you can say your network does not allow anyone to authenticate that doesn't have a proper operating system on that phone, which helps keep you, again, in a walled garden type of scenario where you're not getting those other problems that happen. So a little bit more of the best practice or things that you can do is also remote wipe. Remote wiping allows you to get rid of data for something that you know is being taken, or someone's lost their laptop. You can immediately take out the entire risk. I'm telling you, even BitLocker can be broken. So if you start up a laptop with a TPM chip inside of it, and you start up partway through to the point that it does the authentication code to the hard drive, cut the power to that laptop and reboot it back up on an external drive, you can get into that laptop. TPM and BitLocker is only a step in trying to protect it, but having something to remote wipe can help even more. Locating lost devices, and we kind of talked about the app restriction, or app restriction within the app itself, but you can also restrict what apps are being downloaded onto that device, which is good. Any questions there? All right. So one of the cool things that you can do with MDM, if you needed another reason to do it, is you can save your TPM keys for everyone doing their BitLocker on the machine, since you've enforced that policy, to your Azure AD. So when they lose it, you can help them recover their device and their information and their system. So if you needed another reason to go do MDM policies in your infrastructure, right there will save you a bunch of time. Next question. Azure has advanced log analytics built in. It's true. So they have all kinds of data collections and workspaces, and then within these workspaces you create different management and device policies. So how many of you actually do and monitor the logs in your infrastructure? Good. So that means, okay, good. Late reply. So managing the logs and watching the logs in your infrastructure is not something you really want to be doing every single day, because it takes up time, and if you don't have good reports to go in and immediately be able to look, you might as well hire someone else to do it, because it's not going to get done. Having workspaces and data collections that automatically pour out or have playbooks in order to mitigate stuff for you that you can go back and check later to make sure, why did this happen? oh, well, Jill decided she was going to McDonald's and signed on to a rogue pineapple. Great. That device is now compromised, and we now know it's compromised, right? Okay. So now talking about the Security and Compliance Center. So Office 365 security reports are a basic report system that you can go in and do a high-level check. You can even configure, oh, I follow this policy because I'm part of GDPR, or I'm not part of GDPR, or name any other compliance and regulatory system out there, and it'll give you a score on how well you're doing on that system. And then audit logs and searches. So defining, so how many of you ever use Wireshark out there? So the way you use Wireshark is you get really good at putting in like a template of what you need to search for and having those on standby. Your audit log and search is exactly what you're doing, is aggregating all of your search through all of your logs, and you just have them on standby as a template to run. I need to know exactly how many times passwords fail more than 3 times successfully in this region. Done. You got exactly what you needed to know, and you get to move on. And advanced sign-in reporting. So advanced sign-in reporting is pretty cool. It allows you to say, okay, if someone signs in across the country where they could have, I guess teleportation might have come into play there, but in the world we live in, if they signed in across the country, it's a bad sign-in request, and it automatically flags that account. And you can continuously put, okay, no one from the Americas region should be signing in from Europe and vice versa, because we don't really have international travelers right now. Having policies like that and advanced sign-in and reports from those sign-ins allow you to know who's a risky user. And is actually fairly easy to set up. Like, it's one of the basic reports and something that you should be using if you're not already. Wait. All right. So this is where it gets fun. Now, I'm going to let you guys pick which one of these you want to go a little further into. Whoop. First one? User accounts and administrator stuff? Cool. So, have any of you heard of just-in-time access? Just-in-time access is a godsend when it comes to needing to give privileged access to someone, but you know you're not going to remember to remove it. This will automatically remove it for you. It gives you the access when you need it, where you need it, and revoked at different times if you have, say, temporary employees or anyone that needs, like, ephemeral accounts, brokering service. You can even delegate other people to give access. So you can't have an administrative privilege on your account until you go in and be like, hey, I need to do this administrative task for XYZ reasons. Okay, sends over to approver. Approver goes, sure, for this much time. And you're done. And you don't even have to worry about it because you're kind of funneling down some of those responsibilities and you don't have to remember to remove it. Lesser vulnerabilities. And conditional access. How many of you have played with conditional access? So conditional access is really cool, and I'm kind of sad because there used to be more in it for basic accounts. Now you can only do it for administrative accounts, I believe, in Microsoft, unless you have a higher license set. But if you need a reason to buy a higher license set, conditional access is definitely one of them. You can do safe countries for sign-in of your users. You can do device management, meaning, okay, anyone with an Android phone, for whatever reason, Android phones are not allowed to sign in because we know there's a security vulnerability with this app right now. You can do it for any number of devices. You can do it for an AI risk assessment as well. So it's that same thing where someone shouldn't be able to get across the country in that amount of time. The AI system knows, okay, they tried incorrectly 3 times from Australia when this person is in the UK before they eventually got in. Or you have a threshold set up that, okay, it started bouncing around. It'll automatically flag that user as an account that shouldn't be signing in and a risk assessment on that. And requiring MFA. If you're not using MFA, please use MFA. It's not foolproof. There are ways around it, but it's another security layer in your organization. And guess what? If you use your phone and you require them to do app authentication, and you require any phone used in their organization to require biometrics to get in, you just did a 3-factor authentication. It's worth doing, I think. Questions on that? So just a summarization is limit your global administrator accounts. If you haven't checked out JIT, JIT is really cool. You do need a higher level of Azure in some cases to do some of the really cool features and the auditing within it. Do you got a question? MFA, separate your administrator and your user account. Of course, conditional access, and have a password policy that doesn't suck for your users. All right, so what are we doing next? Device? Okay, let's do mobile devices. All right. So mobile devices allow for different types of security that you can put on there. Encrypted emails is a pretty cool one. Encrypted emails I see used a lot more over in the UK, unfortunately, than I do in the US. We just kind of send it all free. It's terrible. Data loss policies. So have any of you played with the data loss policies inside of the organization? I know mine has, because I can no longer send out links to my OneDrive to external people. And enabling OneDrive folder. So protection, what this will do is allow different versions to not be modified on your cloud side whenever something happens to an on-prem device. So say one of your endpoints gets ransomware and they map their OneDrive locally because it's super convenient. Well, you can have it protected so it's not migrating back to the cloud on you, or having certain versions on there. And we talked a little already about the mobile application management, which is cool. If you don't want to manage their entire device, you can manage the applications that they install on that device. Alternative authentication. So you don't always need a username and password to log into a system. They have app passcodes. Our software has actually started to really get into it, and you're going to see a lot more of it when they phase out the the basic authentication of modern authentication. The only way apps and pretty much any software is going to be able to communicate with Microsoft is going to be through these app passcodes to get all of their APIs. So keep that in mind, it's coming down. Token authentication, if you are a coder out there, definitely get into token authentication. I haven't played with it too far or too much other than mapping a drive from Azure down to your on-prem environment, but it's very nice to be able to send it directly off with an app authentication that you don't have to have continuously signing in. And SSO. So SSO, I think, is just a convenience in helping against sprawl of passwords out there, because if you're not managing what your users and how your users are signing into your applications, you're giving them right to go do whatever that website allows them to do. And you can lock that down with an SSO type of system. And Microsoft has really kind of made it easy over the years. You used to have to go through all these different like SAML systems or OAuth and this and that. And just do it through Microsoft if you already got the account set up at this point. No more data sprawl there. Do you have any questions about that section? No? And I feel like we only have one left, and probably one of the most important sections here, if I'm going to be honest. See if I can get through it. I think I can. I got 2 minutes. All right. So how many of you have played in the Security and Compliance Center at all? How many of you know your score? Give or take. How well are you guys doing? Did you know that score is all based off of default policies Microsoft thinks you should be using? You can actually modify your score for, yeah, this doesn't really matter, this matters, and then you can really monitor which policies are being applied properly in your organization. If you've just gone into your compliance score and you've done nothing else, go in there and scope it down so you know when you're hitting all of your right points and the most pertinent points in your organization. Making sure your data loss policy matches what your organization is telling your customers you support and how you're not going to lose their data, your data, or someone else's data in their system. Another cool thing is the spoof and spam detection. So when I was talking about earlier, this link that says inside this email is going to a website that has a known bad address. Something in the spoof and spam detection and malware detection is going to detect that before it gets to your end users, which is the ideal scenario in most cases when it looks so good that it looks legitimate. It has your logo on it. It has the name of your CTO. Okay, it must be good. My CTO couldn't have had a hacked email, right? We're going to leave that one there. So if you scoped your compliance score down to only things that you need to make sure that you have in your organization, you should be hitting it 100%. And then if something changes, maybe there's a Microsoft process change, they go in and update those score policies to say, okay, we made this update in the background and anyone following this policy is no longer meeting this requirement, and you get warned that way. Or you can go through and read the hundreds of roadmap items that come through Microsoft's website. One of those two. Okay, so Microsoft Advanced Threat Protection is really cool. So all of these things that we've been doing with AI, BI, and detections over the years, determining what is malicious, what is good, we've learned signatures is not enough. So we've gone into behavioral analysis, and Microsoft has one of the biggest places to go through and play with, okay, we know this was flagged as malicious 100 times when you may have only seen it once through a random antivirus. So they've gotten really good at AI pattern detection for anomalies and anything that's broke the trust domain. Questions there? Now, who of you has heard of Sentinel? How many of you know that it costs a lot? So Sentinel is something that is not free, and it's kind of outside the org of just Microsoft. But that's what makes Sentinel so great. What it does is you can take aggregation points even from AWS, on-prem, you can do Intune. You import all of these logs into this single server. Now you can think maybe this one action would not have been malicious if someone got this weird email. But the chain of this one person getting this email, then maybe a server changing here and watching something pivot through your network in different applications to get where it wants to do, like your data. Sentinel can detect things like this through the anomalies. It is a powerful machine learning. It does third-party applications, so if you don't just get it for yourself and Microsoft, but everything else, it can kind of cost on storage though. Not gonna lie, it is pricey, but is worth it if you want to make sure you have some of the best protection when it comes to aggregation of your logs into a system. And not just your system, but network. It'll say network traffic. You can say ported through here. It's an entire response system as well. You can make your own playbooks as well as it has defaulted playbooks in there. And to summarize all of that. So that's actually all that I had prepared within this system, or within this presentation. Do you have any questions on anything we covered, the privileges, the accesses? Did anyone learn anything? Question, or are you saying you learned something? Good, good. Well, again, if you have any questions about Veeam, we're over there at the booth. If anything, stop by and get a notebook. I see you already got one. Good job. Thank you.